Here is the thing that bothers me most about the way people picture the Big Bang. They see a dot, a tiny blazing speck suspended in the middle of nothing. Then they see it burst outward, throwing fiery shrapnel in every direction, matter flying through a pre-existing void the way debris flies from a grenade. That picture is so seductive, so perfectly cinematic, and it is completely, thoroughly, and magnificently wrong. Not slightly wrong, not wrong in a minor technical detail. Wrong in the most fundamental way a picture can be wrong, which is that it misrepresents the actual geometry of reality itself. So let us start over. Let us throw out the movie and start from the physics. The Big Bang was not a detonation inside space. The Big Bang was the rapid geometric stretching of space itself. That is not a poetic metaphor. That is the precise mathematical conclusion of general relativity, the best tested and most powerful theory of gravity and geometry we have ever produced. And the difference between those two pictures, the explosion versus the stretching, is the difference between a child throwing a ball and the geometry of a whole cosmos unfolding from a state of near-infinite compression. Let me give you a way to feel this in your hands, not just understand it in your head. Imagine you have a massive flat rubber sheet, not a small rubber band. A sheet that extends outward in every direction without any visible edge. Now take a black marker and cover that rubber sheet with tiny dots. Draw them everywhere, spread across the entire surface. Each one of those dots is going to represent a massive cluster of galaxies, a gravitational island in space. Now here is the question. What happens when you physically stretch that rubber? And the answer is what changes everything. The dots do not slide across the rubber. They are not pushed by any force. They do not fly through the air. The rubber between them simply stretches, and because the physical material between the dots grows, the distance separating every pair of dots multiplies. A dot that was 2 centimeters away from you is now 4 centimeters away, not because it moved through the rubber, but because the rubber itself got bigger. A dot that was 10 centimeters away is now 20. Every single dot recedes from every single other dot simultaneously, without any of them actually changing their local position on the rubber. This is the universe. The rubber sheet is space. The dots are the galaxy clusters. And the Big Bang was not the moment the dots were flung outward. The Big Bang was the moment the rubber began its colossal and rapid expansion from a state where all of that stretching had been compressed down to a nearly infinitesimal scale. Now here is where the geometry gets genuinely strange and beautiful, and it is what I love most about this picture. Sit on one of the dots. Look around. Every other dot is moving away from you. Every single one. Dots close by are receding slowly. Dots far away are receding faster. Dots at enormous distances are receding so fast that the light they emit will never reach you because space between you and them is stretching faster than light can travel through it. And here is the critical thing. From your dot, it looks absolutely as though you are sitting at the center of the expansion. The universe appears to be flying away from you in all directions. You feel like the privileged position. You feel like the origin. But now jump to a different dot. Sit over there instead. Do the same measurement. Every other dot is moving away from that position too. That dot also sees itself as the center of expansion. Every dot in this infinite stretching rubber sheet is, by perfect geometric symmetry, the center of the expansion as measured from its own location. There is no dot that is not the center, which means there is no center. The Big Bang did not happen at a point in space. The Big Bang happened everywhere at once, across the entire infinite fabric, because space itself was what was doing the expanding. That is not wordplay. That is the hard geometric truth that general relativity forces upon you the moment you take its equations seriously. Now, I want to tackle something that I think causes more confusion than almost anything else when people try to think about early cosmology, and that is the word singularity. People hear singularity and they picture a tiny, dense ball floating in empty space, and the whole universe pops out of this ball like a cosmic seed. That is not right either. And the mistake comes from confusing the mathematical structure of the equations with a physical image. Here is a more honest way to approach it. If the universe is infinite today, and the observational evidence strongly suggests it is, then it was also infinite at the beginning. Let that settle for a moment. An infinite universe does not become finite when you run time backwards. What changes is not the total volume. What changes is the density. If you take an infinite ocean and squeeze it so that every cubic meter of it is packed into an incredibly tiny region, you do not get a small ocean. You get an ocean that is still infinite, but where every pair of points that are now far apart were then incredibly close together. The distances between things shrink towards zero. The density of everything shoots toward infinity. But the total amount of space, if space is genuinely infinite, remains infinite. So the early universe was not a tiny hot marble in a void. It was an infinite hot dense everywhere, a cosmic soup of energy and raw potential compressed to microscopic separations between every point. When physicists talk about the singularity, they are mostly talking about the moment where the equations break down, where the density reaches values so extreme and the scales become so small that our current physics cannot reliably describe what is happening. It is not a description of a physical object. It is a description of the edge of our knowledge. Beyond that wall, in the first fractions of a second, we enter a regime where quantum mechanics and gravity are both essential, and neither has been successfully merged with the other. String theory, loop, quantum gravity, and other frameworks make attempts to describe this territory, but no single framework has been experimentally confirmed. What we can say is that time itself, as a geometric property of the universe, appears to have a beginning. Not that time existed and then the universe appeared inside it. But that time, as a dimension of spacetime geometry, is part of what unfolded. There was no moment before the Big Bang, because before requires time, and time came with the expansion, not before it. Now, I want to spend some time on one of the most stunning observational discoveries in the history of science, because it is what turned the Big Bang from a theoretical speculation into a physical reality we can measure with instruments. That discovery is the cosmic redshift, and it is routinely confused with something much more mundane. You have probably heard of the Doppler effect. You stand on a street corner. A car horn approaches you and the pitch rises. It moves past you and the pitch drops. This happens because the sound waves are being compressed in front of the moving source and stretched behind it. Astronomers noticed something similar when they looked at the light from distant galaxies. The spectral lines, the precise fingerprint frequencies of elements like hydrogen, were shifted toward the red end of the spectrum, meaning toward longer, lower energy wavelengths. And many people conclude from this that galaxies are moving through space away from us, and the Doppler effect is stretching their light. But that is not the full picture. Cosmological redshift is not the same thing as Doppler redshift, and the distinction is profound. When a galaxy is moving through space, there is a Doppler contribution. But when space itself is stretching, the wavelength of the light physically stretches along with the space it is traveling through. A photon emitted by a galaxy billions of years ago with a certain wavelength will have that wavelength stretched by the same factor that space has stretched since the photon was emitted. By the time it reaches your telescope, it may have been stretched by a factor of 2 or 3 or 10. The redshift is not a record of motion through space. It is a record of how much space has expanded since the light was emitted. The universe is not just flying apart. The space between the galaxies is literally growing, and the light carries the memory of that growth in its wavelength. This is why Edwin Hubble's measurements in the late 1920s were so world-shaking. He measured the redshift of distant galaxies and found a systematic relationship. The farther away a galaxy, the greater its redshift. The greater the redshift, the faster the apparent recession. And if you run this observation backward in time, every galaxy that is now far away was once close. Every separation that is now large was once small. The geometry of the universe was once compressed. The expanding universe is not a theory. It is a measured observational fact written in the spectrum of every distant galaxy ever observed. Now, I want to address something that is going to make the physics even stranger than what we have already covered, because in the 1980s, a physicist named Alan Guth proposed something that changed the entire way cosmologists think about the first moments after the Big Bang. He called it inflation. And the core idea is this. In the first unimaginably brief moment of the universe, far earlier than a nanosecond, in fact, in a fraction of a second so small that writing out the zeros would take longer than this video, space did not just expand. It expanded at a rate so ferociously fast that it doubled in size, then doubled again, doing this perhaps 60 or more times in an interval smaller than any measurement instrument we have ever built could detect. This is not an explosion. This is not matter being flung. This is a phase transition in the geometry of space itself, driven by a scalar energy field that for a brief moment acted like a cosmological repulsion, a kind of anti-gravity that caused space to accelerate its own stretching at a runaway exponential rate. And then, as the inflationary field decayed, this enormous potential energy was converted into the hot dense plasma of particles and radiation that we call the hot Big Bang. The inflation ended. The universe filled with heat, and from that heat, over billions of years, came everything. Inflation solves three problems that had haunted cosmologists for decades. It explains why the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the hot early universe that we can still detect with radio telescopes today, has the same temperature in all directions to better than 1 part in 100,000, even though regions on opposite sides of the sky were too far apart to have ever been in thermal contact if the universe had always expanded at its current rate. Inflation stretches a small, causally connected patch to enormous scales, making the whole observable universe emerge from a tiny uniform region. It explains why the universe appears to be geometrically flat, meaning that parallel lines remain parallel and the geometry of large-scale space does not curve closed like a sphere or open like a saddle. Inflation stretches any initial curvature to near flatness the way stretching a balloon makes its surface appear increasingly flat. And it explains why we do not see certain exotic particles that grand unified theories predict should have been produced in enormous quantities in the very hot early universe. Inflation dilutes them to undetectable densities by stretching space by such an enormous factor. These are not small victories. These are deep structural predictions that the inflationary model makes and that the observed universe appears to satisfy. Now I want to come back to something I think deserves its own moment of appreciation because it is philosophically remarkable and physically deep. The universe cooled as it expanded. This is just thermodynamics. When a gas expands, it cools. When the rubber sheet of space stretches, the energy density drops. In the first second, the temperature was so high that individual protons and neutrons could not even hold together into nuclei. The thermal energy was sufficient to smash any nucleus apart the moment it tried to form. As the universe expanded and cooled, around 3 minutes after the Big Bang, the temperature dropped to a point where protons and neutrons could fuse. Hydrogen nuclei, helium nuclei, and trace amounts of lithium were synthesized in this first 3-minute window. This is called Big Bang nucleosynthesis, and the predicted ratios of hydrogen to helium to lithium match the observed ratios in the oldest, most pristine parts of the universe to remarkable precision. The theory is not just qualitatively right, it is quantitatively right. The numbers come out. Then, about 380,000 years later, the universe had cooled enough for electrons to be captured by nuclei, forming neutral atoms for the first time. Before this moment, the universe was a plasma, a hot fog so dense that photons could not travel any significant distance before being scattered. After this moment, the universe became transparent. The photons that were present at that moment streamed freely through space, and they are still streaming today. We detect them as the cosmic microwave background radiation, a faint glow at about 2.7 degrees above absolute zero, filling every direction of the sky. This radiation is the direct fossil imprint of the moment the universe first became see-through, and it was predicted theoretically before it was detected observationally. That is what a good theory does. It does not just explain what you already see, it tells you what to look for before you find it. So take the whole picture together. The universe began in a state of near-infinite compression of an already infinite space. Space expanded, initially at an inflationary exponential rate, then more slowly, then recently accelerating again due to dark energy, which is a whole separate story. As it expanded, it cooled. As it cooled, structure emerged. First the lightest nuclei, then neutral atoms, then under the slow patient pull of gravity, gas clouds, stars, galaxies, and clusters of galaxies. The stars lived and died, forging heavier elements in their cores and in their deaths, and flinging those elements into space. New generations of stars formed from this enriched material. Planets formed around them. And on at least one of those planets, the atoms produced in stellar furnaces assembled themselves into beings capable of asking where all of this came from. The rubber sheet stretched, And everything that has ever happened, every thought, every observation, every piece of knowledge, is a pattern in the geometry of that stretching. That is not the picture of an explosion. It is something far more subtle and far more beautiful. And the moment you replace the old image with the correct one, the universe stops being a chaos of flying debris and becomes what it actually is, a geometric object of stupendous scale undergoing a continuous structural evolution described by a handful of equations that fit on a single page. And those equations, not the imagery, not the movie, are what we should be staring at when we want to know what the beginning of everything actually was.